3 years earlier, the rain had turned Beacon Street into a ribbon of black glass, and Claire Bennett had walked into Miller's diner believing she was about to comfort the man she loved. The place was small, warm, and ordinary, with red vinyl booths, chrome-edged tables, and a pie display glowing near the register. Outside, traffic hissed through puddles. Inside, coffee burned quietly on the warmer, and an old country song played from speakers that sounded older than both of them. Ethan was already there when she arrived. Not in the navy suit she liked. Not in the wool coat that made him look like he belonged in boardrooms and airport lounges. He sat in the back booth wearing a faded gray jacket, his dark hair damp from the weather, one hand wrapped around a plain white coffee mug. His silver watch lay loose against his wrist, scratched across the face, the leather band worn soft at the edges. Claire noticed it before she noticed his eyes. That was the kind of thing she hated remembering now. She had noticed the watch looked cheap before she noticed he looked tired. "You picked a diner," she said, trying to make it sound playful as she slid into the booth. Ethan gave her a small smile, but it did not reach the corners of his mouth. "I thought we could use somewhere quiet." A waitress came by with laminated menus, and Claire ordered tea because she did not want to eat diner food in the dress she had worn for him. Ethan ordered coffee and nothing else. The waitress walked away. For a moment, there was only the tap of rain against the window and the low scrape of silverware from another table. Ethan looked down at his hands. That frightened her more than anything. Ethan always met the world directly. He was the man who answered hard questions without blinking, who could walk into a tense room and make everyone else sit straighter. But that night, he looked like someone rehearsing bad news and still failing to find the gentle version. "Claire," he said, "there is something I need to tell you." Her stomach tightened. "You are scaring me." He nodded once. "I know." He turned the coffee mug slowly between his palms. The deal in Chicago collapsed. 2 investors pulled out. Then a lender froze our credit line. I have spent the last 72 hours trying to stop the chain reaction, but it is done. The company is gone. Claire stared at him. The old song kept playing. Someone at the counter laughed too loudly. "Gone?" she repeated. "What does that mean?" Ethan lifted his eyes. They were steady now, almost painfully steady. "It means I lost control of everything tied to it. The apartment, the car, most of my accounts. I have a little left, but not enough to keep living the way I was." Claire felt the air change around her, as if the diner had become smaller. "But you said last month you were expanding." "I was. You said things were strong." "I thought they were." She looked at the rain on the window because looking at him made it harder to think. In her mind, numbers began lining up like threats. Rent, groceries, medical bills from her mother's last year, the electric shut-off notice from when she was 16, the sound of her mother whispering, "Not tonight, please, not tonight," while searching couch cushions for quarters. Ethan reached across the table. His fingers touched hers. "I am not asking you to fix it," he said quietly. "I just wanted you to know before anyone else did." She should have squeezed his hand. She should have asked if he had slept. She should have said his name like it was still worth the same without money around it. Instead, her eyes dropped to the check the waitress had placed near the edge of the table. 2 coffees. 1 tea. A side of toast he had not touched. $42.18 with tax. Such a small bill. Such a humiliating little thing to be afraid of. Ethan saw her looking. Something in his face shifted, not anger, not surprise, more like a door quietly closing. "Claire." She pulled her hand back and folded both hands in her lap. "Where are you staying tonight?" He paused. "A hotel for now. A modest one. And after that, I will figure it out." "That is not a plan." The words came sharper than she meant them to. Ethan sat back. "No, it is not. Not yet." Her throat burned. "I grew up with not yet, Ethan. I grew up with we will figure it out. I know what those words mean when the bills come. I know you are scared. Do you?" Her voice broke, and she hated that too. "Because I cannot go backward. I cannot spend my life wondering if the card will decline or if the landlord will wait another week. I cannot become my mother." Ethan looked at her for a long time. The rain made silver lines down the glass beside him. "I am still me," he said. It was the simplest thing he could have said. It should have been enough. Claire looked at his worn jacket, the scratched watch, the coffee he had not finished, and the future she suddenly pictured as small rooms and overdue envelopes. "I am sorry," she whispered. His face went very still. "For what?" She forced herself to say it before courage or cruelty left her. I cannot build a future with a man who has nothing. The diner seemed to hush around them, though no one else had heard. Ethan lowered his eyes to the watch on his wrist. For a second, Claire thought he might argue. Tell her she was wrong. Beg her to stay. Instead, he removed the watch and placed it gently on the table between them. My father wore this when he had nothing, he said. He used to say a man's worth is easier to see before the world dresses it up. Claire stared at it, confused and ashamed and defensive all at once. Do not do that. Do what? Make this about character. Ethan nodded, accepting the blow like he had expected it. He picked up the check, placed 3 $20 bills on the table, and stood. You are right. Tonight made that clear enough. He walked her to the door anyway, because that was who he was, even when she no longer deserved his manners. Under the diner awning, rain misted the sidewalk and yellow cab lights smeared across the street. Claire waited for him to say goodbye. He did not. He only looked at her once, with a sadness so quiet it felt almost kind, then stepped into the rain and disappeared down Beacon Street without looking back. Claire did not cry until she reached her apartment in South Boston, and even then, the tears came in a way that made her angrier than sad. She made it through the cab ride with her chin lifted, watching rain slide down the window while the city passed in broken reflections, telling herself she had done the responsible thing. She had not betrayed Ethan. She had protected herself. There was a difference. That was what she repeated while climbing the narrow stairs to the 3rd floor, while unlocking the door with shaking fingers, while stepping into the small apartment she shared with Vanessa Cole, where the radiator hissed too loudly and the kitchen light flickered whenever the microwave ran. Then she saw the chipped mug Ethan had bought her at a street fair in Cambridge, still sitting beside the sink, painted with tiny blue flowers. Her breath caught so sharply it hurt. She picked it up, held it for 1 second, then set it down as if it had burned her. Vanessa looked up from the couch, wrapped in a cream blanket, a glass of white wine balanced on the armrest. That bad? Claire stood in the doorway, soaked at the hem of her coat, mascara beginning to blur beneath her eyes. He lost everything. Vanessa blinked, then sat straighter. Everything. Claire nodded. The company. The apartment. His accounts. I do not know all of it. Vanessa let out a slow breath, the kind that sounded almost like relief dressed as sympathy. Oh, Claire. That tone did something to her. It softened the guilt just enough for fear to take its place. I ended it, Claire whispered. Vanessa was quiet for half a beat, then stood and crossed the room. She took Claire's wet coat from her shoulders and hung it over a chair. You did what you had to do. Claire looked at her. Did I? Yes. Vanessa's answer came fast, polished, certain. You are 29 years old. You are not a college girl dating a guy with a guitar and a dream. You want a home, security, a family someday, a life where you are not counting every dollar at the grocery store. Claire pressed her lips together. He said he was still himself. Vanessa gave a sad little smile. That is what broke men say when they need you to ignore reality. The words landed cruelly, but they sounded practical enough to survive. Claire walked to the bathroom and shut the door behind her. The light above the mirror buzzed. She gripped the sink and looked at herself, rainwater in her hair, lipstick faded, eyes red. For one wild second, she wanted to run back to Miller's diner, find Ethan under the awning, take his hand, and say she had panicked. She wanted to tell him about the overdue envelopes of her childhood, about pretending not to be hungry at school, about the way poverty followed you even after you escaped it, hiding in your purse, your posture, your choice of men. But pride was quieter than love and much easier to obey. So she turned on the faucet, splashed cold water on her face, and let the sound cover the first real sob. The next morning, Ethan did not call. Claire checked her phone before coffee, after coffee, on the train to work, in the elevator, between meetings, and again in the bathroom stall where no one could see her hands shaking. Nothing. No angry message. No pleading voicemail. No final paragraph that would let her feel like the decision had been mutual. Just silence. By noon, she hated him for making silence feel like judgment. By evening, she hated herself for knowing it was not. Days passed. Then weeks. Boston slipped from rain into sharp blue cold. Claire moved through her public relations job with the careful brightness of a woman determined to look successful. She pitched campaigns, smiled through client dinners, wore heels that clicked confidently across marble floors, and ignored the way her chest tightened whenever she passed a diner window at night. Vanessa kept telling her she was healing. "You did not lose a man," she said one Friday while they walked through Copley Place, passing stores where one handbag cost more than Claire's first car. "You avoided a lifetime of rescuing one." Claire nodded because nodding was easier than explaining that Ethan had never once asked to be rescued. That was the worst part. He had only asked to be known without the shine around him. Then Ryan Pierce appeared like an answer to a question Claire was ashamed of asking. She met him at a charity mixer near the seaport, where the ceiling was high, the wine was French, and the view of the harbor made everyone speak as if they owned the future. Ryan was handsome in a clean, practiced way, with sandy blonde hair, a navy suit, and a smile that arrived exactly when it was supposed to. He knew Vanessa from business school. He kissed Claire's hand as a joke, but held it half a second longer than necessary. "Claire Bennett," he said, as if testing how her name sounded in an expensive room. "Vanessa tells me you are the only honest person in public relations." Claire laughed because it was easy, and because easy felt like mercy. Ryan ordered her a drink without asking the price. He complimented her dress, her career, her ambition. He spoke about growth, investments, winter homes, and how Boston was becoming too small for people who knew what they wanted. Everything about him signaled stability. Everything about him answered the frightened girl inside, Claire, who still remembered empty refrigerators and collection calls. When he walked her to the rideshare lane that night, he draped his coat around her shoulders before she could say she was cold. It smelled like cedar and expensive cologne. "You deserve a life that feels certain," he said softly. Claire looked up at him, wanting so badly to believe certainty was the same as love. A month later, he sent roses to her office. 3 months later, he introduced her to investors as the woman who makes me look better than I am. Everyone laughed. Claire laughed too, though something in the sentence stayed with her. Not because it was insulting enough to name, just because Ethan would never have said it. Ethan had once introduced her to a colleague at a street festival by saying, "This is Claire. She sees people clearly." The memory arrived without warning and left her quiet for the rest of the evening. Ryan noticed, but only enough to ask if she was tired. He did not ask where she had gone inside her head. That winter, Claire found Ethan's mug packed in a box under the sink. She sat on the kitchen floor with it in her hands while snow tapped softly against the window. Vanessa came home, saw it, and sighed. "Claire, please do not romanticize a man just because he disappeared." Claire traced the tiny blue flowers with her thumb. "I think I hurt him." "Maybe," Vanessa said, dropping her keys in a bowl. "But pain does not pay rent either." Claire closed her eyes. There it was again, the sentence that had built a wall around her heart and called it wisdom. She put the mug back in the box. She taped it shut. She told herself Ryan was the future, Ethan was a lesson, and regret was just the sound old fear made when it did not get to win. But every time it rained, she still saw Ethan outside Miller's diner, stepping into the dark without looking back. By the time Ryan Pierce became part of Claire's life, Ethan Whitmore had become a ghost she had trained herself not to search for. She never saw him at charity events, never crossed him in restaurants, never caught his name in a headline, and that absence made it easier to believe he had truly fallen out of the world they once shared. Sometimes, late at night, Claire would open a search bar and type the first 3 letters of his name, then stop before the suggestions loaded. She told herself it was respect. It was not. It was fear, because if he was still struggling, she would have to face the cruelty of leaving. And if he was not, she would have to face something worse, the possibility that she had only loved the version of him wrapped in success. Ryan never left room for that kind of quiet question. He filled Claire's days with reservations, invitations, weekend plans, and compliments that sounded beautiful until she noticed how often they belonged to the outside of her. "That dress is perfect for the Morgan dinner. Your smile photographs incredibly well." Clients trust a man more when the right woman is beside him. Beside him. Always beside him. Like a polished chair. Like a framed painting. Like a signal that Ryan Pierce had chosen well. Claire ignored the discomfort because everyone around her called it romance. Vanessa adored him. Her co-workers envied him. Her boss, Marlene, said Ryan was the kind of man who could open doors Claire had not even reached yet. And Ryan did open doors. Glass ones, mostly. Restaurant doors. Hotel doors. doors to private clubs with brass plaques and silent elevators. He liked walking into rooms with his hand at the small of Claire's back, guiding her forward just enough for people to see them together. At first, she mistook that pressure for protection. Later, she understood it was placement. He liked her exactly where he could display her. 6 months after they met, Ryan took Claire to dinner at a steakhouse in the financial district, the kind of place with low leather booths, white tablecloths, and menus without dollar signs. Snow drifted against the windows, soft and cinematic, making the city look cleaner than it was. Ryan ordered for both of them and spoke for 20 minutes about a new development fund he was launching with partners in New York. Claire tried to follow the numbers, but there was something slippery in the way he described them. Lots of confidence, very few details. When she asked a simple question about the charity component printed in the investor packet, Ryan smiled, as if she had said something charming. You do not need to worry about the mechanics. Claire set down her water glass. It is a public campaign. If I am helping shape the messaging, I need to understand what the money actually supports. His smile held, but his eyes cooled. It supports opportunity. That is the phrase people need to hear. She looked at the packet beside his plate. Families, workers, housing grants, words designed to feel warm in a donor's mouth. And behind the phrase? Ryan leaned back. You are overthinking it. Ethan would have answered the question. The thought came so fast Claire almost flinched. Ethan would have pushed the packet across the table, pointed to the numbers, explained the risk, admitted what he did not know. Ethan had never made her feel small for wanting clarity. Ryan reached across the table and touched her hand. His cufflink flashed under the light. Claire, your talent is making things sound human. Leave the structure to me. She nodded, but the old unease stayed. 2 weeks later, Ryan proposed on a rooftop overlooking the Boston skyline. There were heat lamps, white roses, a hidden photographer, and Vanessa pretending to be surprised even though she had helped choose the ring. The diamond was stunning, square-cut, bright as ice, almost too heavy on Claire's finger. Ryan knelt, said all the correct words, and everyone clapped from behind the glass doors. Claire said yes, because the moment was too beautiful to interrupt with doubt. She said yes, because her mother would have cried to see her daughter chosen by a man who could promise stability. She said yes, because somewhere in the back of her mind, a girl who had once counted grocery coupons whispered, finally. Afterward, Ryan held her close for the cameras and murmured, you are going to look incredible in the announcement photos. Not we are going to be happy. Not I cannot wait to build a life with you. Claire smiled anyway. The engagement became a small social event of its own. There were brunches, fittings, floral samples, venue tours, and long afternoons where Vanessa and the planner debated shades of ivory like national policy. Ryan wanted the wedding at the Whitmore Grand Hotel because, as he put it, nothing in Boston says power quite like that ballroom. Claire did not react to the name because she did not know it meant anything. Whitmore was common enough, she told herself, just another old family name stamped on a luxury building. She signed contracts, approved menus, and stood in front of mirrors while women clipped fabric around her waist and told her she was lucky. Yet the closer the wedding came, the more often Ethan returned in small, ordinary ways. In the hiss of rain against glass, in the smell of diner coffee, in the sight of a man wearing an old silver watch on the train. Once, while cleaning out her closet, she found the sealed box with the blue flower mug inside. She did not open it. She sat on the floor beside it for a long time, still wearing her engagement ring, and whispered, I am sorry, to a man who was not there to hear it. The week before the wedding, Ryan became sharper. He took calls in the hallway. He closed his laptop when she entered the room. He snapped at a florist for using the wrong phrase in a sponsorship card. When Claire asked if something was wrong, he kissed her forehead and said, just business pressure. Smile for me, okay? This weekend needs to feel effortless. Feel effortless. Not be honest. Not be joyful. Just feel. On the morning of the wedding, Claire woke before sunrise in the bridal suite of the Whitmore Grand Hotel. Boston was still blue with early cold, the streets nearly empty, the river quiet beyond the glass. Her dress hung from the closet door like a decision already made. Vanessa was asleep on the couch, curled beneath a cashmere throw. Claire slipped out of bed and walked barefoot to the window. 32 floors below, hotel staff were already arranging the entrance, rolling out a pale carpet under the awning. For one strange second, She imagined walking down there in jeans, leaving the dress behind, taking a cab to Miller's diner, and ordering tea just to see if the past still had a table. Then her phone buzzed. A message from Ryan lit the screen. "Big day. Let us make it perfect." Claire stared at the words. Perfect had become a room with no air. Still, she typed back, "I am ready." She was not. But by then, the makeup artists were knocking, Vanessa was waking, the flowers were arriving, and the city below was beginning to move. Claire let herself be zipped into silk, pinned into pearls, and praised into silence. She did not know that while she sat in front of the mirror trying to become the woman Ryan wanted to marry, the man she had left in the rain was already on his way to the hotel that carried his name. The first thing Claire heard after Ethan arrived was not his voice. It was the silence that followed him. 32 floors below, the lobby of the Whitmore Grand Hotel had been full of wedding noise only moments earlier. Heels clicking across marble, guests laughing softly, champagne glasses being arranged on silver trays, the low-practice cheer of people attending a beautiful event they would discuss for exactly 1 week. Then Ethan stepped through the revolving doors, and the entire building seemed to inhale. From the bridal suite, Claire could not see the lobby anymore, but she could feel the change rising through the walls. The wedding planner stood near the door, one hand pressed to her earpiece, her smile stiff enough to crack. Vanessa kept refreshing her phone, her face pale in the blue light of the screen. "Say something," Claire whispered. Vanessa did not look up. "There are articles everywhere. I do not know how we missed this." "Missed what?" Vanessa swallowed. "Ethan Whitmore is not just rich, Claire. He is the Whitmore. His family used to own half the waterfront. He rebuilt the company after his father died, then took it private. No interviews. No social media. No red carpets unless charity boards force him into a tuxedo." Claire stared at her reflection. Her veil trembled slightly where it had been pinned into her hair. "That is impossible." But the words sounded weak. She remembered Ethan avoiding cameras. Ethan never wanting to talk about certain meetings. Ethan saying success was loud enough without him adding to it. She had mistaken privacy for modest ambition. Then later, when he said he had nothing, she had mistaken his quiet for defeat. The wedding planner ended her call and turned toward them. "Claire, Mr. Pierce is asking you to remain here." Claire turned. "Ryan said that." "Yes. He said no one is to come downstairs until he handles the situation." The situation. Not the guest. Not Ethan. The situation. Something inside Claire tightened. Why would Ethan be a situation? The planner opened her mouth, but Vanessa answered first, voice low. "Because this is his hotel." The room tilted around the edges. Claire looked toward the tall windows again, but all she saw was sky and her own ghostly reflection layered over Boston. Ryan knew. Vanessa's silence gave the answer before her words did. Maybe he did not think it mattered. Claire laughed once, but there was no humor in it. A man does not book another man's hotel by accident when that man is Ethan Whitmore. Her phone rang. Ryan. His name filled the screen with a photo from their engagement shoot, his arm around her waist, her smile polished and bright. She answered with cold fingers. "Ryan." His voice came fast, too smooth at the edges. "Claire, sweetheart, stay upstairs. There is a minor business complication downstairs." "Why is Ethan here?" A pause. "Not long. Long enough. You know him?" Claire closed her eyes. The way he asked it told her he already knew the answer. "Do not do that. Claire, this is not the time." "Did you know this was his hotel?" Ryan exhaled sharply. "The Whitmore Group owns dozens of properties. I cannot track every emotional coincidence in your past." Vanessa looked away. Claire gripped the phone tighter. "Why is he here with attorneys?" Another pause. This one was worse. "There are questions about the foundation fund." "What questions?" "Nothing for you to worry about." The same sentence. The same locked door. The same polished dismissal from the steakhouse. Claire's eyes moved to the investor packet on the vanity, half buried beneath a makeup brush and a folded handkerchief. Ryan had insisted they include a charity presentation at the reception, a beautiful slideshow about housing grants for displaced workers, smiling families, new beginnings, hope shaped into tax language. Claire had written the public statement herself. She had made it sound human. Her stomach turned. "Ryan," she said slowly, "what did you do?" His voice hardened, just slightly. "I built an opportunity, and I need my future wife to trust me instead of interrogating me on our wedding day." Future wife. Not Claire. Not love. A title. A role. The door opened before she could answer, and Ryan stepped into the bridal suite wearing a black tuxedo and the expression of a man who had never expected consequences to arrive early. He ended the call while standing 10 feet from her. For a moment, no one moved. He looked perfect. Of course he did. His bow tie was straight, his hair neat, his shoes shining under the soft lights. But his eyes were not calm. "Everyone out," he said. The makeup artist gathered her case without a word. The planner escaped into the hallway. Vanessa hesitated, then stayed by the window until Ryan gave her a look that made even her step back. "I will be outside," she murmured. The door closed. Claire stood in her wedding dress, facing the man she was supposed to marry, and for the first time all day, she felt no need to smile. "Tell me the truth." Ryan rubbed his thumb along his cufflink. "The truth is that Ethan Whitmore enjoys making dramatic entrances." "That is not an answer." "Fine." His jaw tightened. "He is trying to block a development deal." "The charity fund?" "It is not a charity fund in the childish way you are imagining." Claire felt the words settle like dust. People donated to that fund. Investors committed capital based on projected returns attached to community redevelopment. The public-facing language is inspirational. That is how these things work. And the workers? The housing grants. Ryan gave a short, impatient laugh. Some grants would have happened eventually. Eventually. The word was so small, so clean, so devastating. Claire thought of the campaign copy she had approved, the photographs of families, the promise of stability she had helped sell because she wanted so badly to stand beside a man who looked secure. "You used them. I used a narrative. You used me." Ryan stepped closer, lowering his voice. "I elevated you. Do not confuse discomfort with betrayal." There it was. Not an apology. Not even shame. Just ownership wearing a tuxedo. Claire looked down at the ring on her finger, bright and cold. For years she had feared poverty because she thought it made people desperate. But standing in a luxury hotel suite, surrounded by silk and roses and a view worth millions, she saw desperation wearing a different face. It did not always ask for help. Sometimes it asked for applause. A knock sounded once, calm and firm. The door opened before Ryan could speak. A hotel security manager stood outside, shoulders squared. Behind him was a woman in a charcoal suit holding a folder. "Mr. Pierce," she said, "the ballroom has been temporarily closed. Mr. Whitmore is requesting your presence in the private conference room." Ryan's face tightened. "I am in the middle of my wedding." The woman did not blink. "Yes, sir. That is why he came before the ceremony." Claire felt the sentence pass through her like cold air. Ethan had not come to ruin the wedding. He had come to stop a lie before it became a vow. Ryan moved toward the door, then turned back to Claire. "Stay here." It should have sounded protective. It sounded like a command. He left without waiting for her answer. Claire stood alone in the suite, listening to his footsteps fade down the hall. Then she crossed to the vanity, picked up the investor packet, and opened it with hands that no longer trembled. From fear, but from recognition. Page after page, the words looked beautiful. Opportunity, renewal, dignity, home. She had written some of them. She had helped dress emptiness in compassion. Her eyes burned, but she did not cry. Not yet. Instead, she lifted the front of her dress just enough to walk, opened the door, and stepped into the hallway. Vanessa was waiting there, pale and speechless. "Claire, what are you doing?" Claire looked toward the elevators, where 2 hotel staff members were holding the doors. Somewhere below, Ethan Whitmore was standing inside the building that carried his name, facing the man she had almost married for the safety he only pretended to offer. Claire touched the diamond ring on her finger once. "I am done staying where men tell me to stand," she said, and walked toward the elevators before fear could catch up. The elevator descended in near silence, but Claire could hear her own heartbeat as clearly as if the whole hotel had gone quiet just to listen. Vanessa stood beside her, clutching the investor packet against her chest like it might explain away the truth if she held it tightly enough. Claire did not look at her. She watched the numbers drop above the doors. 28, 21, 17. With every floor, the dress felt heavier. Silk gathered around her legs, the diamond on her finger pressed against her skin, and somewhere deep inside, a voice she had ignored for 3 years began to speak louder than fear. "You already know what kind of man Ethan was. You knew before his name meant anything." The doors opened on the 2nd floor, not into the ballroom, but into a private conference wing lined with dark wood and quiet glass. Two hotel employees glanced at Claire's wedding dress and immediately looked away with the careful politeness of people trained not to react. At the end of the hall, double doors stood partly open. Voices carried through the gap. Ryan's voice came first, low and controlled. "This is an outrageous overreach, Ethan. You do not get to interrupt my wedding because your legal team enjoys theater." Then another voice answered, steady and unmistakable. "I came before the ceremony because after the vows, your wife would have been tied publicly to a fund under review." Claire stopped walking. Ethan's voice did not sound angry. That almost hurt more. He sounded calm, measured, like a man holding back more than he allowed the room to see. Vanessa whispered, "Claire, maybe we should wait." Claire moved forward. When she reached the doorway, the room unfolded in front of her like a scene from someone else's life. Ryan stood near the head of a long table, one hand on the back of a leather chair, his tuxedo still perfect, his face tightened around a smile that no longer worked. Across from him stood Ethan Whitmore, not the exhausted man from Miller's Diner, not the man in the gray jacket disappearing into rain. This Ethan wore a black tailored suit and a dark overcoat folded neatly over one arm. His hair was touched with silver at the temples now, just enough to make him look less like a memory and more like a consequence. Beside him, a woman in a charcoal suit had opened a folder on the table. Several pages lay arranged in clean rows: transfer records, donor summaries, property filings, documents Claire only partly understood but recognized enough to fear. Ethan saw her first. For 1 second, the room changed around his eyes. His expression did not soften exactly, but something old moved through it, quick and restrained. Then he looked at the dress, the ring, the packet in her hand, and the guarded calm returned. "Claire," he said. Her name in his voice nearly broke her. Ryan turned sharply. "I told you to stay upstairs." The words struck the room harder than he intended. One of Ethan's attorneys looked up. Vanessa froze behind Claire. Claire stepped fully inside. "I heard you." Ryan's jaw tightened. "Then why are you here?" Claire looked at the pages on the table. "Because my name is on some of the campaign materials. If people were misled, I need to know." Ryan gave a short laugh and turned to Ethan as if Claire had become an inconvenience they shared. "You see what you have done? You have frightened her with paperwork she cannot possibly interpret in context." Claire's face warmed, but she did not step back. Ethan did not defend her. He did something more powerful. He let the insult hang in the room until everyone could see it for what it was. Then he said, "She asked a reasonable question." Ryan's eyes flashed. "Do not speak for my fiancée." Ethan's gaze stayed on Ryan, then stopped speaking over her. The silence after that was clean and sharp. Claire felt it move through her like fresh air. Ryan adjusted his cufflink, a nervous habit she had mistaken for elegance. "This is business. It is complicated." "It is not complicated," the woman in the charcoal suit said. Donor money was promoted as direct community support. The language promised housing stabilization, job placement, and emergency grants. Our review shows that less than 8% of the initial allocation reached any qualifying program. Claire gripped the packet. 8%. She thought of the words she had written. Hope, home, renewal. Her stomach tightened. Where did the rest go? Ryan looked at her with open irritation now. Temporary holding structures, development expenses, pre-launch positioning. Ethan reached into the folder and placed one page in front of Claire. He did not touch her. He did not make it intimate. He simply gave her the truth and let her decide what to do with it. Some of it was routed through marketing vendors connected to Ryan's partners, he said. Some appears to have been used to secure private commitments for a real estate deal your campaign never disclosed. Ryan snapped. Appears is a convenient word when you want to humiliate someone. Ethan turned toward him. Humiliation is not my objective. No. Ryan stepped closer, voice rising just enough to lose its polish. Then why bring this here? Why today? Why in front of her? Ethan's expression remained controlled. Because by tomorrow morning, the campaign would have launched with Claire's face beside yours and her credibility attached to your statements. I thought she deserved the choice I did not get from you. Claire heard the double meaning before anyone else did. The choice. The truth before commitment. Her throat tightened. Ryan noticed. His face changed, and suddenly his anger found an easier target. He turned to Claire with a smile so thin it was almost cruel. That what this is really about? You two have history, do you not? Claire said nothing. Ryan looked around the room, then back at Ethan. She did not tell you? Of course she did not. Claire has always liked successful men. She just prefers knowing they are successful before she invests too much emotion. Vanessa whispered, Ryan, stop. But he kept going, because panic had stripped away charm and left only the machinery underneath. She left him when she thought he was broke. That is the great romance you are protecting, Ethan. She chose me because I looked like the better deal. The sentence landed with terrible accuracy. Claire felt every eye shift toward her, not harshly, not loudly, but enough. Enough to make the room feel like the diner again. Enough to make the old shame stand up inside her. Ryan smiled as if he had won something. Go ahead, Claire. Tell him I am lying. She opened her mouth. No words came, because Ryan was not lying. Not completely. And that was the most painful kind of accusation, the kind built from a truth you had spent years trying to rename. Ethan looked at her, and for a moment the billionaire, the attorneys, the hotel, the wedding, all of it disappeared. He was just the man across the diner table, saying, I am still me. Claire lowered her eyes. You are not lying, she said softly. Ryan's smile widened. Then Claire looked up. But you are still wrong. The room stilled. She turned toward Ethan first, because the apology belonged there before it belonged anywhere else. I did leave when I thought you had nothing. I was afraid, and I let that fear become my values. I hurt you because I judged your future by what I thought was missing from your bank account. Her voice trembled, but she did not stop. That was not wisdom. It was cowardice dressed up as survival. Ethan did not move. His eyes stayed on hers, unreadable but present. Claire turned back to Ryan. But I am not choosing you now. Ryan's expression faltered. Claire. She slid the ring from her finger. It took effort because her hands were cold. The diamond caught the conference room light one last time before she placed it on the table between the documents. I will not marry a man who turns charity into a costume and calls it business. Ryan stared at the ring. For the first time since she had known him, he looked genuinely small. Not poor. Not powerless. Small. There was a difference. Claire stepped away from the table, her dress whispering against the carpet, her heart pounding so hard she thought everyone could hear it. She did not reach for Ethan. She did not ask him to save her from the silence she had created. She only stood there, no longer beside the man who wanted to display her, no longer hiding behind the fear that had once made her cruel. Ethan picked up the old silver watch from beside his folder and set it gently next to the ring. Claire stared at it. The scratched face. The worn leather band. The same watch from the diner. His father's watch. Ryan frowned. What is that supposed to mean? Ethan's voice was quiet. It means some things have value before people know what they cost. Claire's eyes burned, but this time she did not look away. For several seconds, no one in the conference room moved. The ring and the watch lay side by side on the polished table, one bright enough to impress strangers, the other worn enough to remember a life before applause. Claire looked at them both and understood, with a clarity that almost made her knees weak, that she had spent years mistaking shine for safety. Ryan recovered first because men like Ryan always reached for control before they reached for truth. You are emotional, he said, softening his voice now that anger had failed him. It is our wedding day. This is a misunderstanding, and Ethan has timed it perfectly to make you doubt me. Claire turned to him slowly. No, you timed a wedding around a lie and hoped beauty would distract everyone from the numbers. His face tightened. Be careful. The old Claire would have heard danger in that warning and stepped back. The old Claire would have thought about the guests, the flowers, the photographers, the embarrassment, the money already spent, the headlines that might follow. But the woman standing there in a white dress no longer wanted a life purchased with silence. Ethan's attorney gathered the documents into a neat stack. Mr. Pierce, the formal review will continue through the proper channels. The hotel will cooperate with all requests. Ryan barely looked at her. His eyes stayed on Claire. You are making a scene over something you do not understand. Claire picked up the investor packet from the table and held it against her chest. Then I will start by understanding the part one helped create. She turned and walked toward the door. Vanessa followed, whispering her name, but Claire did not stop until she reached the hallway. The conference wing opened toward the grand staircase overlooking the ballroom level. Below, guests had gathered outside the closed doors, murmuring under soft chandeliers, checking phones, adjusting ties, trying to guess why a perfect wedding had been paused. White roses climbed the entrance arch. The string quartet sat silent. Waiters stood frozen beside trays of untouched champagne. It was all so beautiful that it almost looked innocent. Claire paused at the top of the staircase. Vanessa caught up and grabbed her arm. Claire, think for 1 second. You do not have to go down there. You can leave quietly. Let Ryan handle the statement. Claire looked at her friend, really looked at her. Vanessa's makeup was perfect, but fear had made her look younger, almost like the two of them back in their first apartment, pretending ambition could erase hunger. That is what we always do, is it not? Claire said. Let the men with money explain what happened, and hope they mention us kindly. Vanessa's eyes filled with something complicated. I thought I was helping you. I know. Claire's voice softened. But you helped me worship the wrong thing. She gently pulled her arm free and descended the stairs. Each step felt impossible. The dress whispered around her shoes. Conversations faded as people noticed the bride walking alone. Then the ballroom doors opened from the inside, and Claire stepped beneath the arch of white roses without music, without her father at her side, without a groom waiting at the altar. 200 faces turned toward her. Some smiled at first, confused and relieved. Others saw her expression and fell silent. Ryan appeared near the side entrance moments later, moving quickly, his smile restored for the crowd. Ethan stopped at the back of the room, far from the aisle, as if making sure no one could mistake this for rescue. Claire saw that, and it steadied her. He was giving her the one thing she had denied him years ago, the chance to speak for herself. The wedding planner hurried over, whispering, Claire, we can delay another 15 minutes. Claire shook her head. On a small platform near the front, a microphone waited beside a floral arrangement. It had been placed there for vows, for polished speeches, for laughter over champagne. Claire walked to it and wrapped both hands around the stand. Her fingers were cold. Her voice, when it came, was not. Thank you all for being here, she began. The room held its breath. I know many of you traveled, rearranged schedules, bought gifts, and came today expecting to witness a marriage. Ryan approached slowly from the side. Claire, he said under his breath, still smiling for the guests. Do not do this. She did not look at him. But there will not be a wedding today. A wave of sound moved through the ballroom. Gasps. Whispers. A champagne glass clicking against a tray. Claire waited until it settled. I wish I could say this is because of one mistake, one misunderstanding, one difficult conversation. It is not. It is because I have spent too much of my life confusing security with love, status with character, and comfort with truth. Ryan's smile vanished. Vanessa stood near the aisle, one hand over her mouth. Claire looked toward the guests, then down at the diamond ring no longer on her hand. 3 years ago, I left someone because I believed he had lost everything. I did not ask if he was all right. I did not ask what he needed. I looked at what I thought was missing and decided his heart was not enough to build a future on. Her voice cracked, but she let it. That was my failure, not his. Ethan stood still at the back of the room, his face unreadable, but his eyes did not leave hers. Claire continued. Today, I nearly married a man because he looked like everything I thought would keep me safe. But safety without honesty is only another kind of trap. And if my work, my words, or my name helped sell promises to people who needed real help, then I owe them more than silence. Ryan stepped closer. This is private. Claire turned to him then. No, Ryan. The campaign was public. The donations were public. The promises were public. So the truth cannot be hidden behind wedding flowers. The room went completely quiet. For the first time, Claire saw uncertainty ripple across the faces of people who had arrived ready to celebrate wealth without asking what it cost. She breathed in, slow and steady. I am sorry to the people I disappointed. I am sorry to the people I helped mislead. And I am sorry to the man I once judged before I understood what value really meant. She stepped away from the microphone, but before leaving, she reached up and removed the veil from her hair. It came loose gently, pins falling into her palm, the lace sliding down like the last piece of a costume she no longer wanted to wear. She placed it on the empty chair reserved for the bride and walked down the aisle alone. No music followed her. No applause. Just the sound of her own footsteps crossing a ballroom built to display a perfect life. At the back, Ethan moved slightly aside, giving her room to pass. Claire stopped beside him, not close enough to touch. I am not asking you to forgive me, she said softly. Good, Ethan replied, his voice low. Because forgiveness is not a door you knock on once. She nodded, accepting the truth of it. Then she walked past him, through the lobby, and out beneath the hotel awning. The afternoon air was cold against her bare shoulders, honest and sharp. For the first time all day, Claire could breathe. Claire did not go home in the wedding dress. She changed in a hotel restroom with trembling hands, folded the silk into a garment bag, and left it with the planner because she could not carry one more beautiful thing that did not belong to her. By sunset, she was back in her South Boston apartment wearing jeans, an old sweater, and the kind of silence that comes after a room full of people has watched your life split open. Vanessa came by twice that week. Ryan called 14 times the first night, then shifted to messages written by someone who had already hired legal help. Claire did not answer him. She answered the people he had used. That began with a list she found in the campaign files. Housing groups, job centers, community organizers, families who had appeared in photo shoots beside promises that were never meant to arrive on time. The first call was the hardest. My name is Claire Bennett, she said to a woman named Denise at a workers' support office in Worcester. I helped write the public materials for the Pierce Opportunity Fund, and I need to tell you that I do not believe the promises were represented honestly. There was a long pause on the other end. Then Denise said, Do you know how many people believe those promises? Claire closed her eyes. No, but I am ready to learn. Learning did not feel noble. It felt humiliating. It felt like sitting in folding chairs under fluorescent lights while people showed her eviction notices, delayed grant letters, and emails with her own polished phrases copied at the top. It felt like driving 90 miles through freezing rain to apologize to 6 workers in Springfield who did not care that she had cried over a man in a diner. They cared that their job placement program never opened. They cared that their names had helped decorate a campaign while their lives stayed difficult. Claire listened. At first, listening hurt so much she wanted to defend herself. I did not know. I was misled too. I trusted the wrong person. But every excuse sounded thin once it reached her tongue. So she swallowed them and took notes. She quit her public relations firm 2 weeks after the wedding. Marlene called it career suicide. Vanessa called it overcorrection. Claire called it the first honest thing she had done without asking what it would make her look like. She rented a small desk inside a nonprofit office in Dorchester and began helping community groups rewrite grant applications, build donor reports, and expose the gaps in Ryan's campaign without turning real people into tragic photographs. The work paid almost nothing. Her apartment became smaller when she could no longer ignore what things cost. She canceled the gym, sold the designer shoes Ryan had bought her, and learned which grocery store marked down produce on Wednesday mornings. Strangely, the simplicity did not feel like falling. It felt like touching the floor after years of standing on borrowed stairs. Ethan appeared for the first time in April, not as a savior, not with flowers, not with the kind of apology scene Vanessa would have called cinematic. Claire was stacking chairs after a tenant rights workshop when she looked up and saw him standing near the doorway in a navy coat, speaking quietly with Denise. He looked different outside the hotel, less untouchable, more real. His eyes moved to Claire, and the room became very still in her chest. You are here, she said when he approached. Denise asked Whitmore Foundation to review a funding proposal. Claire nodded. Of course. Funding. Not her. She tried not to let disappointment show, because disappointment was not something she had earned. It is a good proposal, she said. It is better because of your notes, Ethan replied. The compliment was plain, professional, almost distant. Somehow it meant more than any flattery Ryan had ever given her. He did not stay long. Before leaving, he paused beside a table covered in flyers and said, I heard you gave back your severance from Pierce's campaign. Claire looked down. It belonged to the people who were supposed to receive help. That must have made things difficult. It did. She forced herself to meet his eyes. But difficulty is not the same as danger. I used to confuse them. Ethan absorbed that quietly. Then he nodded once and left. That became the shape of the year. Brief crossings. Careful words. No promises. Claire saw Ethan at community board meetings, at a job training launch in Lowell, at a winter coat drive in Roxbury, where he carried boxes without letting anyone photograph him. Each time, he remained kind but guarded, close enough to witness, far enough to make clear that change could not be performed for his approval. Claire began to understand that redemption was not a speech. It was showing up after no one clapped. It was correcting documents at midnight. It was telling a donor not to use a family's pain in a brochure. It was apologizing without requesting comfort in return. Summer came slowly to Boston. The trees along Commonwealth Avenue turned green, and the city softened at the edges. Ryan's fund collapsed under investigation, his partners scattered into statements, and the communities he had used finally received partial restitution through a settlement helped by Whitmore Foundation and 3 local legal clinics. Claire did not celebrate when she heard. She sat alone at Miller's Diner, in the same back booth where she had once chosen fear over love, and ordered tea. The waitress placed the check beside her cup. $9.60. Claire looked at it for a long moment, then smiled sadly. She thought of the $42 check from 3 years ago and the man who had paid it without defending himself. On the anniversary of the canceled wedding, Claire stood before a small crowd inside a renovated brick building in Dorchester. The sign outside read Harbor Steps Career Center. No crystal columns. No white roses. Just fresh paint, donated computers, coffee and paper cups, and people who needed work that came with dignity. Claire held a folder against her chest and watched workers, volunteers, and families move through the room. Then the front door opened, and Ethan walked in wearing the old silver watch. The old silver watch caught the morning light as Ethan stepped into Harbor Steps Career Center, and for one breath, Claire was back under the soft neon glow of Miller's Diner, staring at the same scratched face and not understanding what it had been trying to tell her. But this time, she did not look at the watch first. She looked at him. Ethan stood near the entrance in a charcoal coat, quiet among the volunteers carrying coffee trays and cardboard boxes of donated notebooks. No one announced him. No one cleared a path. A few people recognized him and offered grateful nods, but he only nodded back, as if the room mattered more than his name inside it. Claire felt the folder bend slightly in her hands. Denise touched her elbow. "You all right?" Claire nodded. "Yes." And for once, the word was true. The ribbon cutting was simple, almost modest. A city councilwoman spoke for 3 minutes. Denise thanked the legal clinics, the donors, the volunteers, and the families who had refused to become silent when promises failed them. Then she called Claire forward. A year ago, Claire would have known exactly how to stand in front of a room, exactly when to smile, exactly how to make her voice warm enough to sell a dream. Now she walked to the small microphone with a different kind of fear, the honest kind, the kind that did not ask to be admired. "When I first learned how many people had been hurt by beautiful words with nothing behind them," she began, "I wanted to disappear from the story. I wanted to say I had been fooled too. I wanted that to be enough." The room stayed quiet. Ethan stood near the back, hands folded in front of him, watching without rescuing her from a single second of it. But being misled does not erase the responsibility of repeating a lie. I helped make promises sound trustworthy before I had done the work to make sure they were true. This center exists because people here deserved more than an apology. They deserved doors that actually opened. Claire looked at the rows of donated computers, the bulletin board covered in job postings, the fresh paint still sharp in the air. So today is not about charity. It is about repair. It is about work with dignity. It is about making sure hope is not used as decoration. Her voice softened. And it is about learning that value is not measured by what a person owns or what a person loses, but by what they do when no one is rewarding them for doing right. She stepped back from the microphone before emotion could steal the rest. People applauded, not loudly at first, but warmly, steadily, the kind of applause that did not feel like performance. Claire saw Denise wipe one eye. Vanessa stood near the coffee table, quieter than Claire had ever seen her, holding a stack of volunteer forms instead of a champagne glass. Their friendship was not fully repaired, but it was no longer built on pretending. That was enough for now. After the ceremony, people spread through the center. A young father asked about welding certification. A woman in a grocery store uniform signed up for resume help. 2 retired teachers unpacked notebooks onto a shelf. Claire was helping tape a printed schedule to the wall when Ethan came beside her. "It looks good," he said. She glanced at him. "You mean the tape job or the center?" "Both." A small laugh escaped her before she could stop it. It felt unfamiliar, but not wrong. For a moment, they stood shoulder to shoulder, facing the room instead of each other. That made it easier. I never thank you, Claire said. For what? For coming before the wedding. You could have waited. You could have let me attach my whole life to Ryan's lie and said I deserved it. Ethan was quiet long enough that she looked at him. I thought about not coming myself, he admitted. The honesty did not hurt. It humbled her. Why did you? He looked across the room at a wall where framed photographs showed the center being rebuilt, volunteers painting, workers assembling desks, Denise laughing with a roll of blueprints under one arm. Because I knew what it felt like to sit across from someone and not be given the truth before a future changed. Claire swallowed. I am sorry. I know. I am not saying it because I want something. I know that too. The words were gentle, but they did not erase the past. They simply made room for what had grown around it. Ethan reached into the inside pocket of his coat and took out a small envelope. There is something in the office you should see. Claire followed him through a short hallway to a plain room with 2 desks, a file cabinet, and a window overlooking the parking lot. On the wall, in a simple black frame, was a diner receipt dated 3 years earlier. $42.18. Beneath it, written on a small brass plate, were the words, "The night I learned that love without truth becomes a test, and truth without kindness becomes a wound." Claire covered her mouth with one hand. You kept it. Ethan stood a few feet away. For a long time, I kept it because I was angry. His voice was low. Then because I needed to remember not to confuse being chosen with being known. Claire turned toward him, eyes shining. And now, he looked down at the watch on his wrist. Then, slowly, he removed it, the same way he had done in the diner. Only this time his hand did not tremble. He placed it in her palm. The leather was warm from his skin. Now I want you to keep this. Claire stared at it. Ethan, I cannot. You can. Why? His eyes held hers. Because now you understand what it was worth before you knew my name. The words broke something open, but softly this time. Claire held the watch with both hands like it was more fragile than a diamond, more valuable than anything she had once chased. I do not deserve the man you were that night, she said. Maybe not. Ethan's mouth curved slightly, sad and kind at once. But you are not asking to go back to that night. No, she breathed in. I am asking if we can start from this one. Outside the office, someone laughed as a box of pens spilled across the floor. The sound was ordinary, warm, alive. Ethan looked through the doorway at the center, then back at Claire. Coffee, he said. At Miller's diner. No grand gestures. No hidden tests. No pretending. Claire let out a small, tearful laugh. I will pay this time. It is probably more than $42 now. Then I will bring cash. They walked out together into the bright noise of the center, not touching, not rushing, not dressed for a perfect ending. Later that afternoon, they sat in the back booth at Miller's diner while rain brushed softly against the window. Claire wore Ethan's watch on her wrist. Ethan stirred his coffee. Between them lay a small paper check, plain and harmless and real. Claire looked at it, then at him. This time, she reached across the table first. And this time, when Ethan took her hand, she stayed.